Hello and welcome to episode 123 of Live Stream Insiders. Episode 123, we're going to be giving you the kind of ABC and 123 of live streaming over the next 30 minutes, including how to get over your fear of going live. Also, the live stream game show in which you could win $60,000. We've also got details of a report that says RIP Facebook Live, and we'll be discussing whether or not we reckon that is the case. Plus, we've got some updates not only to Facebook Live, but also YouTube Live as well. Hello, I'm Peter Stewart, and my co-host with Live Stream Insiders for over 2 years now, we're well into our third year, is Krishna Day. Hi, Krishna.
Hi, and thanks everybody for joining us here live, all those of you who are actually on the replay. So we're going to do our best to keep up with your comments. Thanks to Carlos and Barb who are already joining us here, and we're going to be watching out for comments. But if you're using Blue Jeans, you know I mentioned probably a few months ago that we had this great feature that we could now see comments actually all available and we could actually respond on desktop. Well, Peter, I don't know if you remember, it actually went away, and I was all confused that week that it went away because Facebook had, of course, made some changes. Guess what? It seems to be back. So if you're using Blue Jeans like we are, it looks as though I can actually see what's happening here, and I can even pin comments like I'm about to do now to say thanks to everybody for joining us here. Anyway, so that makes it much easier than actually checking our phone. But who knows? I'm sure Facebook will make another change. We've got some changes that have happened for Facebook coming up later on in the show. But if you're new to Live Stream Insiders, then Peter and I have been together, coming up 3 years now in terms of this show. And what we like to do is give you the best practice tips, tools, technologies, platform updates to help you integrate live video, live audio into your communications. But we've got so much news as usual, Peter. Why don't we get started? Because I think you've got some interesting news on a platform that I think more and more people are starting to look at in terms of a viable platform for live streaming.
And you know what? It's a platform, Krishna, that perhaps we don't talk often enough about because perhaps it hasn't in the past, had the publicity or had the kind of the backing of some of the big names as maybe Facebook Live has and Periscope did in its early days, of course, which preempted Facebook Live by a year or more. And that is about YouTube Live. And this is really a breakthrough. This is really, really interesting. You know, I'm not a big fan of the phrase game changer, and I'm not sure this is a game changer, but certainly it's very, very interesting. And that is, it'll soon include automatic captions, for your live stream. So I reckon that Facebook won't be too far behind this, and it may mean that you have to speak quite clearly and carefully, and not every single word will be captured correctly. But you know, there are some pretty good automatic voice recognition or voice to text recognition systems which are out there at the moment. So automatic English captions to live streams. Let's hope that it will recognise an English accent as opposed to an American English accent, and the continued goal is to make YouTube live streams much more accessible and interesting and engaging to get more and more viewers. And it's all to do with automatic speech recognition, particularly for live. So this is some of the things that they use on some of the live TV programs, for example. But it also helps with other voice recognition systems. If you're a fan of Apple Clips, the app, which in fact I've started using again after not using for several months, I've kind of started to build it back into my workflow, not for live videos, obviously, because it doesn't do that, but with pre-recorded sequences. So live automatic speech recognition is becoming increasingly more accurate, which is really good. So it's powered by machine learning, so it'll actually learn from the mistakes it makes. In other words, it helps if you go in and correct the words that it has misinterpreted. So they're far from perfect at the moment, but as I say, they're getting better and better all the time. And you know what, Krishna, anything that helps with the convenience for the live streamer and maximises the potential number of people who'll get something out, particularly in these days of people who aren't putting up the volume on, well, any video, let alone a live stream, that is going to be increasingly important for us. It's going to be rolled out over the coming weeks. So that's one of several changes that YouTube has announced, not only the live automatic speech recognition, but also a way to preserve and replay the chats that occurred during your live stream on YouTube Live, and actually play them in sync, so when they actually appeared during the course of the broadcast as well. So that's pretty interesting. And also number 3 is going to mean, with these changes that YouTube has announced and which will be coming into effect over the next few weeks, that if you're using your smartphone to do a live stream on that particular platform, you'll be able to geotag the location where you're doing that live stream. And also what it'll mean is that if then your followers, your viewers, click that location tab, then it'll show other live streams which were recorded in the area as well. So not actually of immediate use to you, apart from perhaps people finding you. So it's another way for people to find you. So if you are a particularly local business, then that's going to be really, really interesting. And also it means that people will be able to filter searches based on location to work out, just see those videos, as I say, that were found and recorded at that particular geotagged place. So I think this is really interesting. Not 1, not 2, but 3 different things that YouTube is bringing out for video, live and recorded as well. I think that's going to be really interesting, and I reckon Facebook won't be too far behind. They're probably kicking themselves there that YouTube has managed to steal a bit of a march on them with these 3 announcements.
I'm particularly interested, Peter, about the preservation of the comments, because that's been something that, as a host of a show, then it's sometimes useful to go back to comments. I always do that for our shows and my own shows, just to see if I've missed anything and respond to things that I've missed. And the other thing for me is, as a viewer, I like to be able to go back, because often the comments add a lot of value, may even have resources in there as well. So I like to be able to see that, and that's been missing for a long time, yet Facebook has had it. And in fact, I think we talked several months ago, probably 6 months ago now, that actually there are some services that you can actually purchase actually with Facebook that actually allows for automatic captioning, but it's great to see it coming there. And of course, as the mum of teens, as I always say, I'm a little bit nervous about that piece on the privacy in terms of the geotagging. So if you've got people who don't want to have their location shown, because it's only available in terms of on mobile, so we know that actually it's the youthful YouTubers who are, and the creators who are using that in particular, and therefore you might just want to remind them to check that, because it's a new feature. I haven't seen it come up for me yet. With looking at mobile, hopefully there'll be a prompt to remind people, but I think that's just something to bear in mind. But really good to see those features coming out, in particular the one for me about the comments. I really like that. And I think thanks everybody here for commenting on the show and saying hello. We really appreciate you being here with us. So let's take a look at some other news, and I'm going to take a little look at Facebook Live for a moment. And as you might realise, Peter works for a large global news organisation, and therefore he uses Live for the Facebook page for his organisation, and is constantly creating video and live video for them as well. And so we've talked about news organisations using and publishers using live video for a long time now, and in particular in terms of looking at Facebook Live, the fact that certain publishers were incentivized to actually use Facebook Live. So this article and all articles that we talk about will actually be available for you in a link that's actually available, all curated for you, so you've got lots of resources there, everything that we reference. So in this particular article, it actually was published, and it was all about publishers, let's say, in terms of their use of Facebook Live. And one of the things that actually the article goes through is about the fact of, it said the number of live videos produced by paid partners has more than halved at the end of 2017. Now, this is really interesting. I'm going to come on to some other data in a little while. I'm not a publisher in terms of in a large media organization, and therefore wouldn't have been incentivized. And it's actually interesting if you look at what large organizations are doing who are publishers versus what we're starting to see smaller businesses or organizations or brands or non-profits do in terms of starting to use Facebook Live, and yet those publishers were some of the first adopters. Of course, if you see that from a large organization, it might get you to pay more attention to live streaming as well. So there's some really interesting statistics that are available in terms of in this article. So let me just talk you through a couple of things. So an analysis of 17 brands that were paid by Facebook to make live videos for the platform from April to December fell by an average of 51%, comparing it to the previous period of time that they were looking at. During the year, Tastemade, we talked about Tastemade several times because they do some very interesting video content in terms of around food. And they really set the bar in terms of what people should be looking at in terms of creating video content if you're actually related to food or brand related to food. So do check out their videos. They posted an average of 69 videos a month originally from April to December. That average dropped to 4 videos a month. That's a huge drop. And for me, it goes back to perhaps the methodology in those organizations in terms of they've got a different business model. So the reason that perhaps I use live video, or some of you who are actually here, who I know are very active in terms of using live video, one of the things is that you actually might want to look at is, well, what's your motivation? What's the reason for you to do it? And of course, those publishers, they're looking at really traffic to their website. They're looking at advertising and sponsorship. That's not the same business model for many, many organizations. So of course, if you're going to be incentivized, you're going to be paid to publish content, then, by Facebook, then you're probably going to pay attention to it. I know that the article talks about the New York Times here, and in the early in 2016, between April and March 2016, they posted 1,618 live videos, or an average of 135 a month. But in the subsequent months, so after that period that they were measuring through to March, that average more than halved from 135 to 63. And so therefore, it's interesting if you look at it in terms of what publishers are doing in terms of their use of live video. But at the same time, there's another piece of content that we actually saw this week, which actually relates to a slightly different story. And this is about, despite the subsidies disappearing, some publishers are hoping to actually see more Facebook and planning for more Facebook Lives. So as an example, again, an organization we talked about when they started off with their show, it's called Super Deluxe, and it's from the Turner organization. So that's a comedy channel. And by the end of 2018, it plans to produce one brand-sponsored live video every single week. And that's because whilst the viewership has fallen, the engagement rates have changed. The engagement with their content has increased. This goes back to, what do you measure? What's important to you in terms of live video? And of course, if we go back a little while back to January this year, when there was a change to the notification about what was happening with the Facebook algorithm, really, again, Facebook are looking for engagement. And we know that Facebook Lives give a lot of engagement versus other content. And so in the article, it said, based on Facebook's live popularity among publishers, whilst it's not a full-blown retreat, in January of 2018, this is data from Social Bakers, 52% of the top 1,000 publishers in the US had actually aired a live broadcast, 52%. Now that's down from a high of 63% in November of 2016. But that got me thinking about, well, what was going on in November? There's a lot of things that go on in November. You've got a lot of holiday celebrations, many different celebrations. You've got the holidays coming up, particularly in the US. You've got a lot of sales pitches to be done in terms of selling products. So those publishers are more than likely to be not just news organizations, but also brands. So if you think about your marketing calendar in November, and that's what they were comparing it to, which was 63% in November, there's a lot more news. There's a lot more things you might want to share about versus actually if you look at January, which is perhaps a little quieter. So I'm not sure it's a kind of a good comparison to look at November and January, but there's still 52% of those actually organizations of the top 1,000 US publishers who are using live video. So I think it's just back to think about what your goals are, think about your engagement, but also when you're looking at data. So of course, when you actually have a headline that says, you know, some organizations have decreased their amount of live video by 94%, that's a headline which will get traction. But you've got to dig beneath that in terms of, let's understand it. That's with a group of organizations who were news organizations who are being paid to, and publishers who are being paid by Facebook. If Facebook withdraws their funding and there's resources, some of the organizations we talked about in terms of we've talked about putting in place live video and live video teams, they've actually put resources, they've put people into that. And if they're not getting that same result, then of course, and they're not being paid to do it, they're going to withdraw, they're going to change their tactics and move on to some other things. But don't just look at that. You've got to look at the balance of it. So I think it's been interesting in terms of in this 1 week, we've had two sides of that coin, but also just explore it for you. Facebook Live is far from being saturated at this point in time. There are still so many organizations that Peter meets, that I meet, who actually haven't even started. Who, in fact, Peter and I were talking just this week, weren't we, Peter, about the fact of you met with somebody and they couldn't actually believe that they actually could go. It was quite a well-known organization. They couldn't actually believe that they could go live just from their mobile phone, did they?
Absolutely, yes. I'm trying to remember who that was. Oh, yes, it was a big, I won't name them, but it was a big trade organisation based in London, which represents, I would say, probably thousands of people across the UK. And they were seeking my advice, and I asked them what kind of equipment they were getting, and they were ready to spend thousands of pounds on unnecessary equipment because they didn't realise that actually they could go live to the world and all of their customers, because they're a public-facing organisation, and all of their clients, just using one of those. They had no idea. And you know what? Also, that reminds me of another couple of examples that Krishna and I shared between us privately over the course of the past week. One huge multinational company, I sent this to you, didn't I, Krishna? Which was the Facebook Live was, well, I shared it with a few people, and one said that is a complete and utter abomination. It had no idea of concept, of angles, of storyline, of, well, let's put it this way. I was going to say narrative. There was no narrative on this Facebook Live, but it was bizarre. Absolutely. You know, we're only starting to get going on Facebook Live. And live streaming in general. And what I picked up from that article in cjr.org was that one of the quotes was that jumped out at me: if Facebook Live is not in the top 15% of the things you're looking to develop for your video strategy in the next year, you would be making a mistake. So, you know, even that is only talking about considering. So, you know, it's the peak has not been reached by a long way. Okay, this is Livestream Insiders. It's episode 123. And you know what? Bizarrely, Krishna, for the first time ever, I think, I didn't set the clock. So we're going to have to go a little bit on trust and judgment this time. But I reckon we've got just over 5 minutes left, and a short little clip from me of our next news item, which is really interesting, actually. It's about another platform we don't mention very often. Yeah, we talk about Facebook Live, I would imagine, probably every single week. Periscope, Twitter, you know, most weeks perhaps, but not by any means every week. And then occasionally it's a YouTube, or it's a house party, or it's a fire talk, or a meerkat, you know, one of these that we've have long since fallen off the edge of a cliff. But also Twitch as well. And there's a new live game show which is premiering on Thursday. And this is really interesting because Twitch is very often known as the platform for gamers. Yeah, they often live stream their video games. But this is a little bit different because what it's going to be is a competition by which up-and-coming live streamers compete for a $60,000 prize. Now, the concept itself isn't new because it was announced last December. However, they've put a few more bits of flesh on those bones. And essentially what it means that if you're a creator on the Twitch platform and you need a bit of a boost so you can make live streaming your full-time gig, well, these people you can see here will be competing against each other in a series of challenges. You know, think of Survival or if you're in the UK, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. One of those kinds of things for that grand prize. It will be split over 12 months. 14 competitors, March the 8th, which is Thursday. And you'll be able to see these up-and-coming Twitch, or partners as they call them, judged on their ability to perform several different live streaming tasks. So things like motivating viewers with a call to action, and then sorting out a custom overlay that people can interact with and things like that. And then the viewers will be able to eliminate who they don't think has got a particular grasp on the live streaming concept after each round. And it's not just gamers, as I mentioned before, but also chefs, musicians and other artists as well. And as I say, the whole idea is to help expose contestants to Twitch, as well as teach everyone a few more ideas about how to live stream successfully with some of those concepts about the introduction and the outroduction and the forward promotion and the teasing and the telling and the welcoming and explaining and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see the kinds of different things, the kind of concepts, the way things are explained during the course of that particular show. I think that's interesting. I'm going to try and watch that and certainly see if I can hunt out a few reports to see how people coped with that kind of pressure.
It's interesting because another piece of news I picked up about Twitch, which might be of interest to you if you are in Europe and you haven't actually started to think about using Twitch as a platform to connect with in terms of advertising. So not always do you want to publish content. You might actually want to do some partnerships there. But in fact, this article was about the growth of Twitch expanding in Europe. And the VP of Twitch in Europe actually said that the size of their team has nearly doubled in terms of revenue in 2017 versus 2016. And searches are currently underway for commercial executives to join the team in London, including a director for the team that will broker deals with high-profile creators and creator networks across Europe. And they're also building sales teams in Hamburg and also in Helsinki. And apparently the Nordic region, according to Twitch, represents huge scale for the organization as a collective market rather than individual countries. So really interesting to see that. And that might be something that you want to think about in terms of your video marketing strategy. So I've got a couple of quick things for you. One, as I mentioned, was something that we forgot to mention last time, or we ran out of time last time to talk about. But you might have noticed something that was going on in Facebook. And I noticed this, and these are screenshots from my Android phone when I actually saw this about a week or so ago. And that's the fact that actually there's some changes in terms of notifications, in terms of if you're in groups. So let me just tell you a little bit about this. And the reason that I'm raising this is the fact that within Facebook, I'm seeing a lot more organizations use groups. Facebook have made some changes to groups themselves, and they're being used by corporations, by organizations. That obviously you've got Facebook for workplace available, but for other organizations, I'm seeing products, I'm seeing publishers actually create Facebook groups as a way to connect with people and a way to build a community. And what I'm seeing within those groups is a lot more live video. So that's the reason that we're actually telling you about this. So you might have missed this, But I saw this as a notification in my feed, which therefore I just made a couple of screenshots of. But the first thing is that there was a notice there which they said, we want to make sure that you are getting, that you are not getting too many notifications. Now, instead of getting notifications for all posts in these groups, you'll only get the most relevant highlights, but you can change this at any time. Now, when I look at joining a group, and if I'm, let's say it's a private group and I get accepted into that group, I always make a change to what I want to see. So if something's pretty important, there are certain products, for example, I want to know about all the latest updates. Or in this particular case, it might be a community. I really want to see what's being posted there, and I want to get those notifications. I don't want to just see the highlights, which is what Facebook is suggesting that we might want to see. So this was, whilst my original notifications were set to actually I want to see all of the posts in this particular group, Facebook automatically changed it to saying highlights. So the reason I'm telling you about this is that if you're a member of a community like I am and you want to see that content, you might want to go back and just check that. You could actually, if you see that notification come up, you actually could actually go to make a change. So I made a change to see back to all posts. So I actually very quickly was able to make that change. The reason I'm also telling you is that if you're a creator, if you're publishing content, if you're a host or an admin for a group and you're using live video, you might just want to remind people about how they get that notification. Now, I certainly don't have notifications turned on for all of the groups that I'm a member of, but there are some groups that I actually want to see and make sure that I don't miss that information. So that's just one for you to be aware of. And the other quick tip I want to mention is, again, something that Peter and I have talked about during the course of the week. And we often talk about terms of service, and we talk about how to make sure that your live video, wherever you're creating it, is actually compliant with the terms of service of particular platforms. And this was prompted by the fact of I actually have just done 3 different platforms I've reviewed that actually allow you to live stream pre-recorded content. And in the first 2 articles that I wrote about, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, and you'll actually find the articles over on my site, but again, they'll be curated into the list. Both of those, I actually reference the terms of service, particularly around from Facebook, with 2 key things. One is they don't like you simulcasting, and that as in content going out to Facebook and to somewhere else or multiple places at the same time. Yes, there are ways around that. But the other one, particularly in terms of recorded content, and we've said this many times over the times that this has been available in terms of the terms of service from Facebook, is if you record previously, you've got maybe it's a previously recorded live stream or it's a recorded video. Let's say, for example, as Peter and I have done before, one of us isn't able to be there, so the other, we actually decide we're going to both get on screen and record it, but we still want the show to go out at 7 o'clock on a Sunday or 2 p.m. Eastern time. We could actually record that and then share it. Sometimes what we've done, as we did with a conference we were both at last year, is we recorded an episode and then just shared it as a regular video. We could have shared that as a live video, but what you need to do is be really clear in that description that this is pre-recorded content. And what got me a little nervous is that I saw this latest product that I've actually purchased this week, and you can again find that on my site. I'll find that in my links on Twitter and on Facebook and so on. But the details of it, I saw somebody send out a message in a newsletter to say they think this is great because they're just going to set it and forget it. And if you're going to send out pre-recorded content as live video, you're really not doing yourselves any favours if you're not there in real time to comment. This particular piece of software does automatically, you have to choose what statement you want it to go out, but you actually can choose for a statement to go out with that video. So that's the first kind of tool that I've seen that actually does comply with Facebook terms of service. So it actually states there's different sentences you could put in there, and it can go above your post and it can go at the bottom of your post, but it will stay there. And I've tried to delete it out and edit the post and all that kind of thing. It will be there. So of course, after an event, you can go back and edit it like we always edit our live streams and add more content in terms of the context of what we were talking about in the episode. But This is really good news from this particular platform, but I did get very concerned when I saw this person promoting this product in their newsletter, and the fact that they were saying that they thought this was great because they could just set it, forget it, give it to a virtual assistant to be able to manage, and it could be streaming it at whatever time of day. And I think you're actually going to lose people in terms of that credibility. So watch out for that. If you're not using software that actually automatically places that in there, and there's lots of different ways you can actually stream. You can use OBS, you could use vMix, you could use Wirecast, or you could look at a particular live stream tool which is specifically for streaming pre-recorded content, which is what I've been reviewing of late. Then just watch out for that. If it's not there automatically, do put that statement. That is required by Facebook. I don't know whether you'll get into Facebook jail for it. Probably not at this point in time, but just be aware. I think so many people have got a little tired by seeing people kind of do evergreen content, but actually pretending with false comments there that actually this is really live at this point in time. And I think today's the time where people are not interested in fake content, not interested in fake news. So just be aware of that. Let's have a look in terms of if there's any questions. Peter, you might want to pick up if there's any comments or questions that have been coming in around this as a topic. Ruth, I saw a comment from you before about comments in terms of preservation of comments on YouTube. So as we're talking about comments on Facebook, yeah, that's equally important. And you were saying that it might slow down some of the trolls. Let's hope it does. And so if you've got thoughts in terms of would you restream pre-recorded content, pre-recorded live video? I'm actually going to test it with our stream probably from today. And I'm actually going to test out restreaming and being there present, but over onto YouTube and see what happens there. We've not done it before, but I think it's worth the experiment to see if people are actually interested in getting the content rather than me just posting the video onto YouTube. Let's restream it. But do watch out for that in terms of when you're actually sharing content. So in this case, in my particular case, in the content that I did with some testing of one of the platforms, as I said, it actually says previously recorded. So you can type that in yourself if you're not using a platform like I am, where you actually can put in the details of saying this is previously recorded or previously aired live, are some of the statements that you have there.
Okay, nearly at the end of this particular episode of Live Stream Insiders. One more article to bring you, and it's a bit of a kind of how-to as well. It's going to be interesting. You've probably heard this. It'd be lovely to hear some of your comments and thoughts on this particular article by a guest blog on Mitch Jackson's blog site, who goes under the name of streaming.lawyer, and it was entitled 7 Awful but Common Excuses for Avoiding to go live. And if maybe you've got some clients or customers or maybe even friends and family who always say, oh, well, I know I should, but then some of these might ring home and true to you. Number one, it's not professional. Well, this is, as I say, from a lawyer's perspective, and the number of people who say, oh, it's not professional, is it? And they would prefer to hire kind of a Hollywood production and studios and maybe a camera crew and lighting and microphones and all the rest of it. And with so much pressure that they're going to be encouraged to sit in front of a bookcase wearing a shirt and tie and perhaps coming over a little bit wooden rather than authentic, as they might do on a live stream rather than a recorded video, doing it perhaps sitting on the edge of a desk or maybe from their kitchen or maybe, as Mitch often does, from the beach on his morning walk or run. So that's one excuse that is very often very quick to be discounted. Oh, I would do, but it's not professional. Another one might be, yeah, I would do, but you know what? I might make a mistake. Well, of course, that's how we all learn, isn't it? You're 100% guaranteed to make a mistake. I reckon, Krishna, the only way you're guaranteed not to make a mistake is if you don't do it and you don't try at all. But with a little bit of preparation and a little bit of rehearsal and a little bit of forward planning and some bullet points and maybe some testing through recorded video or a closed live stream that only you can see, or those close to you, then that's one way to overcome that. So that's one of the common ideas that people will give, or common reasons people will give for not going live. Number 3 of 7, I can't use tech. Really? Really? You know what? It takes about 10 seconds to fire up Facebook, doesn't it? Or to power up Periscope. That's no excuse. That's no excuse at all. Number 4, I don't have the right equipment. I refer you to the answer I gave a few moments ago. It takes just a few seconds to fire up Facebook on your mobile phone. That's no excuse. Doesn't cut the mustard in any way, shape or form. Number 5, but I've got nothing interesting to say. So what do you say to your clients? What do you say to your business associates? What do you say to the people around the down at the round table or the Rotary Club or something like that? What do you say when you go to a friend of a friend's dinner party or cheese and wine reception or something like that, and people say, what do you do? And you tell them, and then they come up with those kinds of questions. Of course you've got stuff to say about what you do and how you do it. It's those kind of dinner party questions you're always asked. That's a pretty good way to start. Plus, of course, hobbies, experiences, travel, all sorts of things. Number 6. Someone else tried it. It went bad for them, so it will go bad for me as well. Well, you know what? Success is seen by those that turn up day in and day out. And if you don't turn up, then sure, you won't make any failures. You won't make any mistakes, but you'll also avoid any chance of success as well. And number 7, I'm embarrassed how I might look on video.
I'm afraid we had a little bit of a problem with the audio towards the end of the show. So if you want to get all of the links to the resources that we've talked about and supporting articles, you'll find them with the video post here. Please do think about joining us again in the future. We'd love to have you join us live and join in the conversation, or of course bookmark the show to watch a replay. You'll find us online at fb.com, that's facebook.com/livestreaminsiders. You can also follow the show over on YouTube and get access to the updates if that's your preferred platform for getting access to your video content. Follow me at youtube.com/Krishna Day online. Until next time, remember, join us 7 p.m. UK and Ireland time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, 11 a.m. Pacific time.